So I know I've been gone for a while in that my last few videos were a little, controversial. So I figure it's time to make something chill, something safe, something that no one could possibly get mad at me for. A top 5 list of my favorite non-violent video games. Now, never let it be said that I am against violence in video games, far from it. The last video I made that didn't totally piss people off was about Doom 2016, which is one of my favorite games. But recently, I've been wanting to just chill out and take a break from all the fighting, and in this video, I want to highlight some great games that were fun and exciting without needing violence. I'm intentionally keeping the rules pretty loose for this list. I'm mostly just going off the spirit of the game. As long as the game isn't about the player fighting and killing things, then we're good. I can let a little roughhousing slide as long as it's not a super important part of the experience. Also, I'm splitting the list up by genre and picking my personal favorite game in each genre. I do not claim to be an expert in any of these fields. I have not made any effort to play every non-violent game in each genre and make some sort of definitive list. This list is entirely constructed from stuff that I just happen to have already played and enjoyed. But that means if you've got any suggestions for good games I may have missed, I would love to hear about them in the comments. But, you know, if you're just here to say, oh, you're an idiot because you were talking about puzzle games and you didn't mention Myst or whatever, look, I don't care, dude. This video is just an excuse for me to talk about some games I like, alright? So, first up is puzzles. This is probably the first genre that springs to mind when most people think of non-violent games. Recently, Tetris 99 has taken the world by storm, and there's been some great stuff in the past decade like Antechamber and The Witness. Included here are also some puzzle platformers like the Portal series, Hue, or any of those myriad of first-person puzzle chamber games that cropped up in the wake of Portal. But my pick for favorite puzzle game is Baba Is You. Baba Is You is a somewhat weird puzzle game about pushing blocks and logic. Most levels will involve the statement Baba is you and flag is win, and the goal of every level is to get you, whatever that may end up being, to win, whatever object that may end up being. The twist comes in the form of words that can be moved around to create statements that modify how the objects in the level behave. It teaches you to disregard your preconceived notions of game logic. Some levels just have walls that don't have any rules attached to them. If there's a statement somewhere that says wall is stop, you're not going to be able to walk through it. But sometimes they'll just put walls with no modifiers attached to them just to kind of mess with you, because if they're not modified with anything, they don't do anything. A good example of how you need to sort of change the logic you're using for this game is this level where you're in a room with walls and a door and there's a key inside. Obviously your first instinct is going to be to take the key, push it against the door to try and open it, but unfortunately the door is modified with stop, not shut. However, you can make the statement wall is shut and key is open, use the key on a wall to open it, and there you go. One of the hallmarks of a great puzzle game to me is the aha moment, and Baba Is You has some of the best in the business. Having to wrap your mind around all the possibilities of the words on screen is incredibly rewarding once you've gotten the hang of it, and the solutions make you feel like a genius for finding them, and an idiot for not finding them sooner. And this is a small thing, but the wobbly, sort of squiggle vision animation reminds me a lot of home movies, and I'm always more inclined to like something that can remind me of home movies. Though I do appreciate the option to disable them, because they do get a little tiring to look at after a while. There's over 200 levels of solid puzzling to be had in Baba Is You, and at the price of $15 on PC or Switch, I 100% recommend it. Next up is the mystery genre. Now, to be completely honest, this is a genre that I'm pretty inexperienced with, and honestly, there's also an argument to be made that mystery games are just sort of a subgenre of puzzle games, but don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. Most mainstream mystery stuff often feels the need to throw in half-baked action gameplay, despite supposedly being about putting together clues and using your brain to solve problems. Stuff like LA Noire and Wolf Among Us, while pretty good games, they feel at times like on-rails stories with intermittent, pointless action. And violence is also common enough in these games that they wouldn't really have made the list anyway. Experimental stuff like Her Story or even Gone Home could probably easily have fit in this slot if I'd actually ever finished Her Story or played Gone Home. But my absolute favorite non-violent mystery game is Return of the Obra Dinn. Now, yes, I know, this game is incredibly bloody and has a lot of people dying and being murdered in terrible ways, but the player doesn't do any of it, so it's fine. Return of the Obra Dinn accomplishes something very special in mystery games in that it never holds your hand. There are some helpful features that are there to balance the game, but you're never railroaded or patronized to an Obra Dinn. The gist of the game is that it's the 1800s, something weird went down on this boat, and you have to figure out who everyone was and how they died. To do this, you have a magic pocket watch that lets you relive the last moments before someone died, and a magic notebook that somehow already knows all the answers. Weird, but alright. This is my favorite mystery game for a lot of reasons. From the intriguing story, striking graphics, and total freedom to problem solve on your own, it's also just a really smartly made game. There are almost 60 people to identify and dozens of possible fates to plug in, but the game confirms your correct answers in groups of 3. This means that a little guesswork can get you some results, but you can't just brute force everything. I talked about aha moments in Baba Is You, and let me tell you, the sound when you lock in another 3 answers, that is like a shot of marijuana right to the skull. Yeah, I don't know how drugs work. I ordered mushrooms on my pizza, and all they did was give me gas. Now, if you're like me, you might get to the end, by which I mean seeing all of the memories, and only have maybe a dozen or so correct answers. This is where the real investigating starts, when you focus in on finding every little bit of information about a single person, examining every clue of every memory in which they appear, until you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this guy definitely had the worst death, this guy is a total dick, and the monkey did not deserve what happened to him. Poor little guy. Next up, we have the platformer genre. Much like mystery games, it's actually kinda hard to find mainstream platformers that don't have dedicated mechanics for killing enemies. Even the best, most kid-friendly platformers feature stomping, punching, and otherwise mutilating enemies as a fairly core mechanic. Some recent examples I could think of for non-violent platformers were Celeste, which I unfortunately confess to have not played yet, but I promise I will get around to it, the beautiful perspective-shifting Fez, and the wonderful, character-driven Thomas Was Alone. But for this spot, my pick has to be Grow Home. Grow Home is a very odd platformer in that the controls are what you might call, terrible. Your character, this little robot Bud, is a slippery and clumsy little guy, and his movements are procedurally generated and based on the game's physics engine. Bud's legs only sort of vaguely simulate walking, and he can easily stumble over the simplest of terrain. The climbing controls are really just aiming and grabbing manually using the shoulder buttons to control his arms, and the pickups for aerial mobility are extremely limited. But Grow Home becomes a little more interesting when you look at it less like a traditional platformer, you know, something like Mario, and look at it more like one of those goofy novelty physics games, like Surgeon Simulator, where a lot of the fun is in just learning to control the system. A small action like bouncing off a leaf and landing where you want to land is really tough to do, but very satisfying in Grow Home, and it's a short but really well-structured challenge. Now, if you want a more detailed look, you can check out my very old, very mediocre video on it, and my video on its sequel, Grow Up, right over here. But in order for this to qualify as a non-violent game, make sure not to put the sheep in the water. It's a little horrifying. Next up, we have simulators. Now, again, I never claimed to be an expert in any of these genres because this list is really just an excuse to talk about some games I like. So in this spot, I might have something like SimCity, which I haven't played in years, Harvest Moon, which I also haven't played in years, and, I don't know, some of those driving sim games. This isn't really one of them. Lemonade Stand. You guys remember Lemonade Stand? That was fun. The only game in this genre that I've really gotten into is my pick for this spot, Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is one of those games that just has an amazing ability to suck you in. You'll say, alright, just one more day and I'll save and go to sleep, and then you say, well, my cranberries are just a couple days from harvesting, and just a few more gifts to that cute girl who likes daffodils, and she'll maybe be my girlfriend, and maybe I can get a few levels deeper in the mines, and whoops, it is 6 in the morning, and my farm is flourishing, but I think my real-life eyes are about to fall out of my head from staring at my computer all night. There's really not a ton to say about Stardew Valley except that it's basically Harvest Moon perfected, with some modern conveniences that don't ruin the spirit of the game, like a half-decent inventory space. Looking at you, friends of Mineral Town, you stole so many hours of my precious childhood that I will never get back. Stardew Valley is engrossing to the point of being potentially bad for your health, and now with multiplayer and a Switch port, you can get your friends and loved ones in on the obsession too. Just what we all needed. And finally, we have Other. This is where I'm putting some of the more hard to define stuff like the Stanley Parable, Journey, Flower, some of the more out there walking simulators like Everybody's Gone to the Rapture that aren't really puzzles, and Journey and Flower aren't really platformers. They're just kinda something. And for my favorite game that is just something, we have Katamari Damacy. For those of you who don't know, Katamari Damacy is a game about progression. Specifically progression via rolling a big sticky ball over polygonal objects to pick them up, and make your ball bigger to pick up bigger objects. Trust me, if there was anything else to this game, I would tell you, but that is basically the whole thing, and I love it. Originally, I wanted to do an entire video dedicated to this game a few months ago when the Switch port came out, but I realized that, again, there's not really a ton to say about this game. The visuals are charmingly simple, the music is catchy as all hell, but the core experience of rolling things up is just so inexplicably fun that I have a really hard time understanding why I find this game so fun. It just kind of is.
Oh, honey, things like that just don't happen.
The progression of watching your Katamari slowly grow from ping pong ball size to rolling up entire towns is certainly part of it. There's also the controls, which use only the two PS2 joysticks to push and rotate the ball. It takes a little getting used to, but once you've got it down, steering the Katamari becomes as natural as riding a bike. It's a completely unique experience as well. There's really no other game quite like it. If you want the mechanical fun of rolling a ball around and picking stuff up, you go to Katamari, cause the king of all the cosmos, he's got the goods. He's got that gameplay you crave, I guess. And before we wrap this all up, I didn't want to spend too much time defending any of my choices as non-violent games, but I feel I do need to directly address it with Katamari. Yes, you can roll up people. Yes, they don't really seem to appreciate being rolled up into a ball of bikes, cars, and giant root vegetables. And yes, they probably don't survive the process of being turned into stars. However, they don't seem to be directly harmed when you roll them up, because they're still wiggling and they seem perfectly fine. And also, technically, the king of all the cosmos is the one who turns them into a star, not you, so it doesn't really count. There we go, justified. Okay, great. So that's my list of really just a few of my favorite non-violent games. Let me know what you guys are interested in seeing next from me. I really am not sure what exactly people want from this channel. I recently got a lot of traffic from that Kingdom Hearts 3 video, but I'm not really gonna do reviews of new games like that very often, I don't think. Kingdom Hearts 3 was kind of a special case. Anyway, just let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.